Hi everyone, it's Rachel back with the Shades of Orange, and today I'm here to do another science fiction and fantasy wrap-up. Normally I try to have some sort of theme or idea tying the video together that goes into the title and the thumbnail, and I'll be honest, I've been racking my brain all week how to tie this video together with a snappy title, and I can't think of anything. Right now, the working title is I read books, so if that is the thumbnail right now and the title, that's why. That being said, I have read some good books as well as found some books that I didn't think were amazing, and I'll tell you all about them, so hopefully you do stick around. All that being said, let's get started. First, let's talk science fiction, and I read Mercury Rising by R.W.W. Greene, and this is a book that I received for review from Angry Robot Books. This is the author of The Light Years, a book that I have recommended on my channel several times before, so I was very eager to check out this one. And I gotta say, I'm very impressed by the author's range because this book is totally different, but also worth checking out. This is a piece of alternative history, so it's a piece of science fiction set back in the 1970s, and we follow a person who is just trying to get by, but of course gets pulled into a larger scheme. This book is considered to be an alternate history because in this imagined past, scientists have created this atomic engine that has allowed humanity to move and travel within the solar system, and so space travel has been accelerated. And so it's an interesting book because it's technically set in the past, but it feels like a piece of futuristic science fiction. And the word I want to use to describe this book in terms of tone is really, really cool. So right off the bat in the first chapter, we meet this character named Jet, and the way the story is told, again, like the tone, the style, it just, again, it feels very stylistic, and it's the kind of book that I can really imagine working really well on the screen. I think with the right director, it could just be this really cool stylistic film, and it was just a lot of fun. These are the kind of books that honestly aren't typically like 5-star reads for me, just because when I describe a book as fun, usually it's not something that completely hits home and really hits me in the feels the same way. I do prefer my books dark and devastating, but regardless, this was an entertaining read, one I would recommend if you enjoy that kind of lighthearted story with some good adventure, some good action. It moved quickly and was well paced, and I really love this one. So again, I want to read everything that this author has put out at this point because I really think that he has a lot of talent for storytelling, and I just want more. Next up, we have The Infinite Circus by Wong, and this is another book I requested for review from Angry Robot Books. This story is set in a future where we follow a man named Jess who is a mixed-race empath. He is on the run from a group of evil scientists, basically this institution that is trying to control him. So he runs away to a pleasure moon and he gets involved with a local circus. As well, he also gets tied in with the local crime boss, and the story goes from there. This is a story that I expected to describe as a fun space romp, and I gotta say it was not what I expected, but that isn't a bad thing. In terms of tone, this is actually a much more serious story, especially where it goes. And again, I don't like to give away too much of the plot, but yeah, it definitely gets darker than I expected it to be. And I also was really impressed, despite the fact that this is just, to my understanding, a standalone novel. The world building within this small book is really vast. So that was my first impression from the first chapter is, whoa, this book is not the tone I expected it to be, and the world building was so lush and intricate, despite, again, not having hundreds and hundreds of pages across a large spanning series. And so I really enjoyed this one. I would love to see more by this author. I thought it was, yeah, just an interesting story, an interesting plot. It wasn't quite a 5-star read, and again, I'm just really particular when it comes to finding those like all-time favorites, but definitely an enjoyable one for sure. I do want to mention that this book has some ace representation, specifically pan-romantic ace representation, and that's not something that I am own voices for, and so I didn't completely connect with that storyline, but I very much appreciate that that representation is something that isn't seen a lot in fiction and really is needed for those that are ace themselves. The part that I didn't love about that was the fact that because they wanted to describe it on the page, the character identifies himself, and so you do have some relationship talk where they talk about their lack of sexual desire and how they feel about showing different forms of affection, like holding hands and so forth. And if you know me and my reading taste, it's the fact that I don't love relationship talk in stories. I don't mind sexy times, but obviously with ace representation, you're not going to get that. So that was the only thing that just was not to my taste, but very much respect that it's in the book because I think that's really important for those that are ace and looking to see themselves in fiction. Next up, we have Drunk on All Your Strange New Worlds by Robson. And this is a book I received from Tor.com for review. And this is probably technically a novel, but a very short one. It's barely over a novella length. And in the story, we follow a translator, specifically an alien translator, who has been assigned to work with these high diplomat aliens. And within the story, right at the beginning, you find out that there has been a murder and this person gets implicated, and it turns into a bit of a murder mystery. You know me, I love mystery stories, I like dark stories, but despite the fact that this is a murder mystery, it's a very fun, lighthearted one. So this honestly is more of one of those fun space romps where you have a character and it's jokey and fun and there's lots of good banter and you just go along for the ride. It's not the kind of story where you're really going to worry too much about the reason that this person got murdered or, you know, worry for anyone's safety. Instead, you just kind of go along with it. So it was fun, but I find that these stories, for me at least, aren't necessarily the most memorable, so I don't know if this one is going to end up on my favorites of the year list, but still glad I got to check it out. It was, again, enjoyable at the time. Next, I want to talk about Brotherhood by Chen, and this is a Star Wars novel, which is not normally something I talk about on my channel. I do prefer the Legends books, so the books that take place with the prequels and original trilogy over the new Disney stuff, but this one sounded so amazing that I decided to check it out and review it for you all. So specifically, this book is set right after the Clone Wars, and so we follow Anakin as well as Obi-Wan, so you get dual perspectives within the book. And basically this book is what I feel like the prequel trilogy needed, because this book basically breaks out and fills out the relationship between first Anakin and Obi-Wan, getting to see them move from master and apprentice into brothers and friends, and then you also get to see more of the relationship between Padme and Anakin now that they are married, and then you also get to see the development of the relationship between Anakin and Palpatine, which is again something I don't think was really fleshed out enough. And so the hard part for a lot of viewers watching episode 3 was the fact that they really felt like the story jumped forward and you didn't get to see those relationships develop into what they were by that final volume. So honestly, I really enjoyed this one. For full disclosure, I am a huge fan, of course, of the original trilogy, but I also do have a lot of fond memories and feelings about the prequel trilogy because that was actually my introduction to Star Wars. So I actually started by watching Attack of the Clones, and then I went back and watched The Phantom Menace and so forth. And so I do have a lot of affection for them. I joke that my teenage self thought that Anakin and Padme were the ultimate couple, and I thought that their romance was the most beautiful thing ever. It's hard to rewatch it as an adult with different eyes and realize how problematic it was, but at the time it was gold. Anyway, I do want to say that if you are a fan of the prequel trilogy, you really should check this one out because I really think that it fleshes out the trilogy in a really good way, gives you more time with the characters, and I personally loved it a lot. If you are not a fan of the prequel trilogies, you probably want to skip it just because, again, you're going to get more prequels and it's going to annoy you. So I would love to know if people are interested in me doing more reviews of Star Wars books. I do actually read a lot of them, but typically I just don't include them in these wrap-up videos. But if there is interest, definitely let me know in the comments and I'll consider reviewing more in the future. And to try something a little bit different, I do want to talk about a series I'm currently reading but not ready to technically review on my channel. And so I'm reading through the Legends of the Galactic Heroes series. The first book is Dawn, which I don't own a physical copy of. I'm listening to it on Scribd, and then I have physical copies of book 2 and 3. The series is 10 books long, and essentially it's set in a far-flung future where there is this evil dictator Rudolph who is reigning over the various colonies because of course humanity has expanded beyond Earth. And then we follow these heroes that are potentially trying to fight against the evil empire. It's a very classic setup, but I don't really mind that because I do just love that kind of space opera and military science fiction. So I'm really hoping this will be right up my alley. It is translated from Japanese, and I know there's an anime which I haven't watched yet. So mostly I'm mentioning this now because I'd love to get feedback. This is a series that I think I will love, but I'm not really sure at this point how far to go. And specifically, the big issue here is that my library doesn't own these books. Again, I got the first one through Scribd, and then I own the second 2 volumes, but if I want to continue on and finish out all 10 books, I do need to buy the rest, which I don't typically do unless I've already read books. I try to only buy books I've already read and know are favorites. So if you want to give me some feedback whether or not these ones are worth the commitment and if I should be asking for them for my birthday, I'd love to know. And I do always have my Amazon wish list listed down below if you do want to help me out with that, if you want to nudge me to get through the series a little bit faster. Yeah, I'd love to know what you think of this all, and yeah, please give me some feedback if you have read this or have watched the corresponding TV show. And switching over to fantasy, I want to talk about this book here. I have an art copy, so it's Ordinary Monsters by J.M. Miro, and this is the first book in a new Gothic fantasy series, a Gothic historical fantasy series specifically. Within this series, we follow a group of young orphans with supernatural abilities, and you find out that there are people trying to track them down, and the story goes from there. I picked this book up hoping that it was going to be really dark when it comes to Gothic fiction, and I will say that in terms of tone, it is much lighter than I expected. It almost has a cozy feel to it. So again, not entirely to my taste. However, I do have to say that the actual prose in the story are fantastic. The writing is beautiful. The character work is really fleshed out, and it's quite a large book. And again, it's only the first book in a series. And so I do think if you like that really classic Gothic fantasy that is set in a very historical period and is very like timely and kind of gas lamps and all of that, then I do think that you will really enjoy this one. I like this one, but it wasn't entirely to my taste, which I didn't know until I got to read it for myself. But definitely there's so much about this book I like, and I do think that it definitely has an audience of people that will absolutely love it. Next up, we have Daughter of Redwinter by Ed McDonald, and this is a book I received for review from Tor Books. And this follows a woman who has the ability to see and speak with ghosts. At the beginning of the story, she gets tied in with another injured woman that she rescues, and the two run off together. This is a story that I really hoped that I would love. I knew it was more fantasy than horror, so despite the fact that they were seeing ghosts, I knew it wasn't going to get really dark. I wish it had gotten darker, but that's just a personal preference. What I will say about this book is that it was alright, but I really didn't connect with the story, the characters, or the world building. I found them just to be average. Nothing about the story was bad. I don't have any ranty complaints about it, but honestly, it's the kind of story that I would recommend only to those of you that just want more and more fantasy, that love this particular narrative, that just can read it over and over again and never get tired of it. If you're looking for something new, if you're looking for something amazing and different, I was pretty underwhelmed by this one. It was a bit of a disappointment because I definitely thought it might be a favorite, and yeah, it wasn't. And finally, for fantasy, I have the first two books in the Rooks and Ruins series. The first one being the Obsidian Tower, the second one being the Quicksilver Court, and both of these are by Melissa Caruso, and these are books that I received for review from Orbit Books. These are backlist titles, but the third and probably final book is coming out in December, so they sent these and so I can get caught up in preparation for that last book. This is a really great fantasy series, specifically epic fantasy series, primarily following around one individual woman who you find out has magical abilities which aren't uncommon within the land, but what is unique about her is that her abilities cause people to die when she touches them. And I've kind of read a setup like that before in other fiction, and I do like it. It's kind of like Rogue from the X-Men. And so I really enjoyed it as a premise because you have a person that becomes very isolated, very afraid to form relationships. I will say that the protagonist's voice does read a little bit young. These of course are classified as adult fiction, but they definitely do have that crossover appeal, but not to the point that makes me, as someone who prefers adult fiction, to be turned off by them. I just think that they aren't overly adult. And so you do run into some of the tropes that you kind of normally see in these genres. So there's a bit of like romance potential and all of that, and will they, won't they, all of that. But besides that, the actual story I found to be very compelling. There's a good mystery, lots of political intrigue, and I did find these books really easy to go through. I enjoyed learning more about the magic system as we went and more about the characters' powers, and I do like that the story, or specifically the character, really did progress. So she does go through a lot of development within these books, which I'm really happy to see because again, she starts out a bit kind of young and naive, but moves on from there. So needless to say, I do recommend these books, and if you want to get caught up like me, the third book is coming out in December and I'm dying to get my hands on it so I can finish it out and see where it all goes from here. So that's it for this video here. I would love to hear of the books I talked about, which ones are you planning on checking out for yourself? And I would also love to hear, would you like more or less Star Wars content on my channel? I really do want your feedback because honestly it will determine what I do in future videos. As well, if you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing. I do read a lot of adult science fiction, fantasy, horror, and thrillers. You can help me out by sharing this video around online, giving it a thumbs up, dropping a little comment, even if it's just a little emoji like a book or a spaceship. All of that works great for me. And if you want to hit that little notification bell, then you'll never miss another video. Thanks so much for watching. Talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.